Hello and welcome to the Toon Network Transfer Links video. I'm Adam and I thought I'd create a video series which takes us through all of the wild rumoured signings of the season. In the video series there will be a defenders series which you're watching right now. There'll also be midfielders and there'll be attackers. I'll try and compile as much as I can of all the rumours, all the signings I think we should be making and players that we should be looking at for ambition for Rafa Benitez in the Premier League, for us to not only survive but to spend every last penny available, Mike. And obviously I'm not going to get every single transfer rumour in there. I'll do our very best. We'll have a look at about 50 odd players that we've been linked with, could buy, and take us through the squad there. So first and foremost, this is the defenders video. So let's have a look at goalkeepers first. I'll have to thank my mate Johnny Monkhouse for doing some excellent graphics here, which will be popping up on your screen any minute now. People listening to this on a podcast, don't worry, I will be describing everything you see in full detail, so don't worry. So, first and foremost, let's have a look at goalkeepers. So the situation with goalkeepers is that, well, we bought Matt Sells last summer. Rafa was intent on not having any goalkeeping injuries, which hampered our relegation season the last time we were in the Premier League. Rob Elliott was injured, Darlow was injured, so Krul was out on loan. So I think what's probably going to happen this season is I can see him selling or loaning out Sells, because that hasn't clearly worked out. And also see us selling Krul because he seems quite a saleable asset, although his loan stint in Holland this season didn't go amazingly for him. A few bloopers there. Maybe, I mean, I don't know what's happened to him, to be honest. I don't know if that's just him done. But I can probably see us definitely going into the next season with Darlow and Elliott. I can't see us getting rid of more than two goalkeepers if he does indeed get rid of Sells and Sells and Tim Krul. So if we were to stay in the Premier League, we would probably be looking at, I would say, if I'm Rafa Benitez, can I rely on Elliott being fit for the whole season? I'm not sure. Can I trust Darlow to be the #1 goalkeeper in the Premier League against the likes of Sergio Aguero and you know, Harry Kane? You know, really top class strikers and midfielders that are going to be, you know, really putting pressure on our defence a lot. So I'm going to have a look at a few goalkeeping transfer targets that we might opt for, which would be in keeping with the level of ambition that I think Rafa wants to show and Mike Ashley has alluded to helping us show. So every transfer target, I've put a very non-scientific 3-star probability scale on the card, and it's basically serves to show my feelings about how likely it is that we will sign those players. So 3-star player, I would say, is very likely. A 1-star, for example, will be less likely, but not completely out of the question. So let's have a look at the first one. So Asmir Begich, he's soon to be 30. He's a reserve goalkeeper at Chelsea. Very experienced in the Premier League. He's played for Stoke a lot. Hasn't got many chances. Look, his who scored rating at the minute is, from this season, is 5.67. He hasn't played many minutes at all under Antonio Conte. Courtois has been unmovable. Has he gone there now and he's got a Premier League? I don't even know if he's got his winner's medal. Like he's played so few games. But he's a player who I think is probably a 2-star probability of signing for us. If Rafa was interested in him, he's still top class. He's still just about in his 20s as it stands. And I think he could be an excellent #1, someone that Darlow could learn a lot from. His distribution's really good, which is one of Elliott's strengths, for example. His reflexes are very good as well, which is probably one of Darlow's strengths. I think if we want if we have real intentions of staying in the Premier League, these are the players that we need to be looking at. Who's not playing? Who's unhappy in their current state? Has Begich been there? He's been at Chelsea a couple of years. Does that mean that he wants to play again? You know, he's still young for a goalkeeper, and he might see Rafa's Newcastle as a decent prospect for getting game time, and he would help bring the other players along as well. He's really tall and commanding. I just think he's a great all-rounder, as Asmir Begovic, and I think he'd be a great target. Next up is an old favourite of Rafa Benitez, and it's Pep Reina. So I've put him at a 1-star probability, simply because he's playing for Napoli, and he's playing pretty well. Got a 6.63 who scored last season. His market value is very low, but we probably have to pay a bit more obviously than that, but he only has 1 year left on his contract there. Yes, he's getting on a bit, but if he fancied coming back to the Premier League, working under Rafa, there's a bit of romance there, I think, in the idea of that signing. I think he's someone who, I mean, he's done it all, hasn't he? He's been there for World Cup winning squads and Euro. He might not have been playing a lot of games there, but he's obviously won major trophies for Liverpool and with Rafa Benitez as well. I think there's an outside chance there. I think he's probably quite settled in Naples, and it's probably more, the rumours have started, probably more to do with the fact that the link between him and Rafa Benitez. But again, someone who's extremely experienced and actually has seen a lot of the continent as well and been successful there. And that kind of, Rafa's talked a lot this season about experience, and he showed that he added a bit of experience last season in the Championship, but in the Premier League we need to ramp that up again, to be honest. And Pep Reina, he's a winner, he's a leader, he leads by example, he'd be great for the dressing room, and I think he'd be an absolutely solid signing should we get him, but I do think it's quite unlikely. Next up, we've got England international Joe Hart, the Pep Guardiola outcast, who spent the last year on loan at Torino. Not massively convincing, actually. Torino have been known to kind of say that they didn't expect him to have made so many mistakes, so I'm not sure it's likely that they're going to retain him beyond this year-long loan. His who scored rating 6.44, which is below par, really. I think the guy just needs some confidence back. His market value is quite high at 12.75. He's only got 2 years left on his contract as well. So I've put this as a 3-star simply because I think he ticks all the boxes. I think Joe Hart would prefer to stay in the Premier League, and if you look at all the top clubs in terms of goalkeeping wise, I don't know where he's going. I don't know what options he's going to have. I think Newcastle are a big proposition. We're not just any old club coming up from the Championships. The infrastructure's there, the money's there, the stadium's there, the fan base is there, the world-class manager's there. We're going places, and Joe Hart, yes, his confidence has been absolutely shattered, and he might have made some mistakes in Italy, but from our perspective, from Newcastle's perspective, I still think he'll be a step up from what we have. I think he could teach Carl Darlow a lot. And he needs somewhere to revitalise his career, to get his confidence back, and he wants to be in that England squad. Yes, he's been selected in the latest squad with 3 other goalkeepers, but he would be a real coup for Newcastle. Nevertheless, he's not the kind of player that Pep wants, because Pep Guardiola wants a sweeper keeper in Claudio Bravo. Well, that didn't turn out amazing either. But I think Joe Hart could see us as a big club, and worth taking a punt on. So I've put him at 3-star. So we'll see what happens there, but this is the kind of player that we should be going for. International class. He's won the Premier League, he's won the FA Cup, and he's played for England in major tournaments. It's invaluable experience once again that we should be looking at. David Espina is another goalkeeper who's playing reserve at one of the bigger clubs, Arsenal. Now, this week he just won the FA Cup final, playing in the FA Cup final with Arsenal for their 7th win under Arsene Wenger. He's a player who's still very young. He's a Colombian international. He's got 2 years left on his contract with a market value of just shy of 6 million. He's not an obvious signing, which is why I've put him in as a 1-star rating of a likelihood of signing for us. But I think at 6.59, again, he hasn't played many games to amass such a good average rating. Petr Cech's getting towards the end of his career, so he might fancy that he could, you know, take the #1 spot at Arsenal. But then there's been rumours of Jack Butland potentially going to one of the bigger clubs. Arsenal have been included in that as well. I would say if Cech is planning on staying around for another couple of years, then and if Wenger or whoever is going to be Arsenal manager decides that they want a new goalkeeper in there, like a Butland, I think he'd be a good fit for them, for example. Espina might, again, be one of those looking for a good Premier League club to stay in the country, to play under a world-class manager in front of a massive crowd. Now, he conceded a bit of a howler against Diego Costa in the FA Cup final. However, he also made an amazing save from Diego Costa later on as well. So I think he's got a lot of talent. He's got a lot of international class as well. Not as likely this one. There hasn't been much talk of him wanting to leave, but I can honestly see if Jack Butland were to go to Arsenal, there may be room for him to move again. If Wenger's going to be there or not, that might help shape his decision as well, and he might be looking for options. It's a 1-star, it's unlikely, but we'll see how we get on. Yet another reserve goalkeeper at one of the top clubs in the Premier League is Willy Caballero for Man City. So he actually played quite a lot of games once Claudio Bravo got into a bit of patchy form. He's just been released on a free transfer from Man City, so he'd be a very cheap option. I've got him at a 2-star because I think other clubs will be looking at him despite the fact that he is 35. But he's an Argentinian international. He's, again, been around the block. If he wants to stay in the country, if he wants to get game time, he's already kind of proved himself in the Premier League this season for a top 3 club, as it turned out. They've obviously not decided to renew contract, probably because of age and probably because Guardiola's looking at other goalkeepers as well, given the Bravo situation hasn't really turned out. But he could be a steal, and he might not expect to play every single game he plays for us. But I think, again, someone who Darlow could learn from, or Woodman could learn from. I think he's a top-class player, and I think we could do a lot worse than signing him. But again, I think that's the end of kind of the goalkeepers section. There hasn't been much buzz about us getting new goalkeepers in. I can very easily see Rafa going into the new season with Darlow and Elliott battling out for the #1 spot. But I just think if we want to be ambitious, if we want to take Newcastle to the next level, not just survive, and pushing for that middle of the table place, sneaking into top 10 if we can, it's a long shot, but we saw how the Premier League table was at the end of this season, and that it's so close between, say, 9th and about 16th as well. So it's anyone's game really, but we need to be ambitious. We need to be signing international players. We need to be signing players that have played for top clubs like Caballero for Man City and the rest that I've mentioned already. Okay, so let's have a look at our defensive options. Now, it's been a while since we've bought a first team left back. I'm trying to a natural first team left back. So Lazar, probably a winger, and he wasn't very good apparently. Hadara was bought as a reserve player. David Santon, probably a right back really. So it's been a while since we've had, I don't know, I might be joking here, but possibly Jose Enrique was the last first team, first choice left back, natural left back that we bought. It's been a long time, and I think this is the summer that we are definitely going to get a good strong left back. So Dummett has been almost ever present this season, but I still feel that he's a centre back playing at left back. I don't think he's a natural left back, however much I think he's excelled this season in the Championship. Premier League, again, It's a much harder challenge. We need to provide competition for that place. We can't rely on Hadara because he's made of glass. Lazar's probably on his way out, definitely as well. So we need to be looking at first team Premier League experienced left backs. So let's have a look on the list at who's on it. Okay, so first up is Andy Robertson, the Scottish left back from Hull City, who've just been relegated. He's got a year left on his contract. He's got a market value of just shy of 6 million. This is why I've put him as a 3-star rating. There's been lots of rumours that Rafa's keen, that we're interested in him. He seems to fit the profile. Now, he's a player that I've admired for quite a long time, to be honest. Robertson is a chance creator from deep, very much in the same way as, say, Aaron Cresswell has been for West Ham. Robertson is... he hasn't had the best of seasons as... Well, he's been part of a defence that's been relegated, of course not. But in previous seasons, he's assisted quite a lot, created a lot of chances for players. And we need someone who can naturally bomb up and down the line. But I think Robertson, given that he's got 1 year left of his contract and he's just been relegated, we'd be able to pick him up for pretty cheap, probably around the 10 million mark, maybe just shy of that, given probably his very highly likely willingness to want to leave Hull. We could give him a good home, and I think he'd slot straight in. I think it'd be a great signing for us, and I'm hoping for this one. I'm really rooting for this one. 3-star for Andy Robertson. Another left back with only 1 year left on his contract is England international, former England international, Kieran Gibbs of Arsenal. He really hasn't seen much action this season, although he has played well when called upon, giving him a who scored average rating this season of 7.03. He's a player who is a good all-rounder. He's 27. He could, again, offer a lot to Newcastle. He's a homegrown player, which is another added bonus, a benefit of signing him. It doesn't look like he's got much of a future at Arsenal, and I think now is about the time that he has a look around and sees what his options are. He may see an opportunity at Newcastle for him to establish a first choice left back place, given that I don't think we've got a very strong option for a Premier League team. So you might target us as a place where you can play 30 odd games, league games a season, and I think that's going to be really attractive to him. You know, he needs game time. His career is running out. He hasn't produced at Arsenal as everyone thought he might have done. He turns 28 shortly after the next season starts in September, so he'll be wanting to move. I think I can't imagine him sticking out at Arsenal, given the impact that Monreal's had, and we don't know what Arsenal's recruitment is going to be like in the summer either. I've got him at a 2-star probability because I think as much as he's a strong option, if he is available, I can see somebody like Liverpool maybe coming in for Gibbs. I can see Man City, who've just let a lot of fullbacks go. I can see them coming in for him. With a year left on his contract, market value of 8.5 million, I think he can come for quite cheap, probably about, they might be able to get it for about sort of 13, 15 million. For Newcastle, that is a lot of money, but it's a position on the pitch which we have very little squad depth, and we're lacking a lot. So I think he'd be a good punt, but maybe not as likely as Robertson. Going north of the border, Celtic's Kieran Tierney, who's had an excellent season under Brendan Rodgers this season, so much so that he won the Scottish Football Writers Young Player of the Season award. He is a natural left back, very young, precocious, but his talent is clearly there to see. You'll have to excuse the Who Scored rating on this, which is 6.13, but that's because Who Scored don't record statistics for the Scottish leagues, so the 6.13 is from his activity in his performances in European competition, in Champions League qualifiers and things like that. So he's got a very low market value of 1.7. He has got 4 years left on his contract at Celtic, so there's a 2-star rating there. I think It's unlikely that Rafa might take a punt on him, given that we probably need more experience going into the Premier League. However, he is an excellent talent. He could use Newcastle as the next step up in his career. If he wanted to leave Celtic, they've had a great season. He might have felt, right, I've done Scotland, let's try my hand in the Premier League. I don't think he would turn Rafa Benitez down, for example. But he's young, so we'll see what comes of that situation. But if we were to get him, very, very good, exciting player, and I think he'd be excellent for us. Another player who's pretty experienced in the Premier League is Luke Shaw, despite his young age. He's had a tumultuous relationship so far with Jose Mourinho since he came in. His injuries have hampered him over the last couple of years. In fact, he's massively injury prone. His market value is 17 million, but again, you'd struggle to be paying much more than 20 million for him given his injury record. In fact, the stat for you is that he's missed 510 days through injury since joining Manchester United 3 years ago. That's quite significant, and that's 89 matches included as well. So as much as he's played pretty well with a 6.93 rating on Who Scored this season when called upon, do we take the chance on someone who is essentially made of Weetabix? I'm not sure we do. His talent is clearly there, but he'll be expecting a big contract coming from Manchester United. The potential that he still has as well. He's an England class left back, but the fitness is an issue. And do we put all of our left back eggs into Luke Shaw only for him to get injured 2 weeks into the season? He'll do his cruciates. Could he break his leg? Is he just one of those players like Hadara who can't catch a break? It's such a risk to pay so much money, given that we won't have endless resources. We'll have decent resources, as Mike Ashley's alluded to, but we won't have endless resources this summer. So we need to be really careful. Rafa likes to spot a bargain as well. If you can get Luke Shaw for maybe closer to the sort of 12-13 million pound mark, great. And I think we could attract him to an extent, just because I think a lot of the other top clubs will look at that injury record and balk at it, to be honest. This is why I've got him at a 1 star though. I don't know if Rafa is going to take the punt on someone who's obviously got the talent, who I think if we were ambitious enough we could really make a play for. But I just don't want to sign someone who's going to get injured all the time, or be in his mindset. I think it's a lot to come back from for a young lad to have had so much poor luck with injuries so far. We'll see what happens, but I don't think Luke Shaw will still be at Manchester United next season. A young player who impressed me this season in the Championship was young left back Ryan Sessional from Fulham. He tore us a new one when they beat us at St James's Park. He's literally just turned 17, which is absolutely crazy. Like on the 18th of May, he turned 17. So he's only probably just getting into having a pro contract. So there might be some complications around signing him around that. There'll probably be tribunals about fee. He's got a market value of 2.55 million. He scored 5 goals and got 3 assists this season as a 16-year-old essentially, which is absolutely crazy. He's got bags of potential. It would be a massive coup, I think, if we got him. I really do. But I think other young players have stepped up from the lower leagues before, and I think he could definitely do a job for us. I know he's young, but he's shown his talent from defence and attack as well. He's a really good passer of the ball as well. I think he managed about 1.8% passing accuracy this season. He's a great tackler as well, one of his strengths. I think he's a wonder kid, and I think if the fact that Fulham now aren't going at the Premier League this season, I think all their big stars will be right for the plucking, and I think we could make a play for him. If we got him, I know there'll be a whole host of clubs after him, which is why I've put a 1 star. Again, with him being so young, would he want to travel so far up north to play his football up there? We don't know. There's too many factors floating around. He might want to stay in Fulham, develop for another year, and then make his big move. A lot of potential around this guy. I really like him a lot. I don't think it's going to happen, but he's definitely worthy of a place on the list if we're going to be ambitious. Yet another player who's been released from Man City is Gayle. Now he's amassed about 325 appearances in the Premier League, so he's certainly got that experience. He's also won a lot of silverware as well. So he's just about, well, he's 31. He will soon to turn 32 by the start of the next season. But I've put him at a 2-star probability for Gayle. He got a 6.88 this season. He had played under Pep Guardiola when Kolarov either wasn't playing or Kolarov was deployed in centre back when the defensive crisis happened. He could offer Newcastle a lot. I think, again, given that he's on a free and we'd just be paying wages and agent fee, whatever, that would be a pretty shrewd buy from Rafa Benitez, and someone that I think he would be looking at. We need to save money where we can, but he's a left back who's got good quality, bit like Gibbs as well. He's been around the block a lot, and got a lot of Premier League experience. He's a good natural left back. He good going forward as well. He's pacey, and I think he's definitely someone that we should be looking at, because I think other clubs will be in for him in the Premier League. He possibly might even go back to France. I don't know, but Gayle, I would certainly not be disappointed if we signed him. 2-star probability. Okay, so let's look at right backs now. So Vernon Anita's gone. He's vacated that hallowed number 8 jersey, which I'm quite pleased about. Look, he's been a decent servant for us, very versatile, but I believe that he was one of those players who was kind of jack of all trades, master of nothing. I wouldn't have put him in defensive midfielder because I thought he was too short. He's got good technical passing, but again, that lack of height is such a weakness, which Hayden, with his height, has kind of shown how much of a benefit that can be. At right back, I thought one of the worst games of the season he had was against Preston, just towards the end of the season when we got promoted. But he got destroyed by that left winger. He shows that he just hasn't got the pace to play right back, so he's out the door. Yedlin, I think he's, as much as he's still quite raw, I think he's a canny operator. I really like him. I like his attitude. He's away training with Seattle Sounders now with his mate Clint Dempsey. He wants to stay fresh. I think he's a model professional, but I think we just need, again, Jesus James was not what we sort of thought he would be. He didn't really get much game time at all. I think it was a case of Rafa seeing an opportunity, bringing him in a bit of experience. Should we need it? Should we rely on it? But I'm not sure that him and Yedlin is strong enough, squad depth-wise, to see us through a Premier League season. Defence will be absolutely crucial going into next season, given the left wingers that we're going to be facing. You know, the likes of Gabriel Jesus, Coutinho. Do you know what I mean? The really world-class left wingers. So we need somebody good. We need somebody that's going to challenge Yedlin, to push him to his potential as well. So let's have a look at some options. So first up, for right back, I've got Arsenal full-back defender Calum Chambers. He was really highly rated when he first went to Arsenal, but he didn't really get the run in the team that he wanted. And actually, Arsenal could have probably done with him this season, given the defensive crisis that they've had. Although they've went on to win the FA Cup, of course, but in the league they've disappointed. Despite playing on loan at Middlesbrough, another relegated side, Chambers actually came out of it looking pretty good. I mean, it's easy to forget that actually Middlesbrough had one of the best defences certainly out of the bottom half, probably one of the best defences. They kind of had a top 10 defence performance, and Chambers was a big part of that. His who scored rating is 7.07, so he's performed really well. He's only 22, and he's got versatility as well. He could play centre back and he could play right back, and I think it's something like that versatility, that youth, but relative experience in the top flight as well. He's homegrown. He just ticks a lot of boxes for me, Calum Chambers, and I think he's a good player. He could be a Newcastle player for years to come, should he really think he's got that potential, which is why I've gone for a 3-star probability that he'll sign if Rafa's interested in him. I don't know what Arsenal are going to be doing in terms of right back. Calum Chambers is not going to supersede Hector Bellerin. It's just not going to happen. So Chambers looked at himself, I'm going to get into centre back. Is Koscielny going to be moved on? Is Gabriel injury prone? Is Mertesacker too old now? I can see Arsenal making some big recruitment decisions as well this summer. So there's a chance that he could fight for his place at Arsenal, or there's a chance that either he gets shoved out on loan again, in which case I think we should be all over it, or if he's up for sale, let's go for it. Absolutely, let's go for it. He's got 3 years left on a deal, and he's got a market value of 10 million. So he's not going to come cheap, Calum Chambers, especially with that homegrown status. So we'd have to probably pay double that, 20-25 million maybe for Calum Chambers if he was available. But if we could get him on loan, I think that's a swift piece of business that we could get done fairly swiftly. So we'll see what happens with that. But I would be absolutely delighted with Calum Chambers. 3-star rating for me. Another player who's impressed me this season is Bournemouth's Adam Smith at right back. Now, he's not great in the air, but I think going forward his passing, tackling and dribbling's been really strong as well. We've proven that we can poach Bournemouth for their top players again. Matt Ritchie, the prime example of that. So there's a chance that, you know, having a former teammate of Ritchie up the right wing, for example, I think there could be some instant chemistry there. I think Bournemouth have had an exceptional season under Eddie Howe, finished in the top half. He might not want to move anywhere, but I think he's a sort of player that's maybe under the radar of other clubs in terms of sort of transfer rumours. He's got a relatively low market value as well, but he has got 3 years left on his contract. So yeah, while it's maybe not highly likely that he would sign for us, I think if we were serious about him, I think he's proven himself in the top flight, and I think he'd be a really good little player. He can pop up with a couple of assists as well, which is probably quite important, and give Yedlin a good run for his money. But someone I think we could pick up relatively cheaply. Again, he's homegrown, and he's a good age as well. He's 26, so who scored rating was 6.84 for the season. He played a lot of games as well to warrant that. So Adam Smith, not an obvious choice, but I think if we were interested, it wouldn't take much to poach him to St James's. Another player who played some games for Bournemouth this season at fullback was Nathan Ake from Chelsea. He was recalled in January, as you'll recall, by Antonio Conte, and he went on to win the league with them. He's another player who they might be looking at a loan option. I know that they'll have big changes at Chelsea. They'll be recruiting a lot of defenders, recalling a lot of other loan defenders as well. But Nathan Ake is someone who could benefit from being at a top club who's going to get minutes. He's 22, Dutch player. He got 7.11 as a who scored rating this season, which is really impressive. I think it's unlikely that we would potentially be able to buy him outright. I just think he's a very good player, and I don't think I would be surprised if Chelsea had already made a decision on him given his performances this season, particularly for Bournemouth. But I've given him a 3-star rating because I think he'd be a very likely loan signing. Rafa wants to be canny with loan signings and bargains this season, and I think Ake's a player who can play both fullbacks. I know he's played a lot of He's played a lot of games left back for Bournemouth, for example, but he can operate on the right as well. He could probably play centre back as well, so he's got that versatility that Rafa is a big fan of. He's a great player, a really tremendous player, and even if we got him on loan for just a season, I would love to see Nathan Ake at Newcastle. I think it'd be a great signing. Next up, an old friendly face in David Santon. So he's another player who's been rumoured this season. Not sure how much I buy into that. That's why I've given him a 1-star probability of signing out of 3. But he has had a reasonable season for Inter. They finished just below AC Milan in the league this season. But he did get an average rating of 7.09, which is really good from who scored. year left on his contract, market value of £4.5 million. He could be a cheap option. We know the player. He's maybe not great. He's maybe not tremendous defensively, it's fair to say. But again, that versatility, the fact that he could play right and left back. He's good going forward. He could be a really good squad option for us. Rafa actually coached him when he was at Inter Milan, when Santon was still quite young, was still fledgling. So there's a bit of a relationship there, which I think is where some of the rumours have come from. I still think he's a one-star probability, because I think we'll probably look at... I can't imagine he'll be first choice. But I think he's certainly worth being on the list because of his versatility, because of his previous relationship with Rafa Benitez. And we know the player, and he's good going forward. So we'll see what comes of it, but I think he'll be a decent player to bolster the squad. So a bit of a wild card for the last one of the right backs is Frederic Sorenson, who's a Danish player who plays for Kony in the Bundesliga. So they got into the Europa League this season, but he was exceptional. He was very much under the radar of a lot of clubs. There's not much buzz about him, but he, in fact, on Who Scored, he got 7.34, which is absolutely ridiculous for a player at an unfancied side, shall I say. He actually made the Who Scored team of the season out the top 5 leagues. He's the best performing right back in the top 5 leagues statistically via WhoScored.com. So he's someone not to be sniffed at. He's got a bit of versatility as well. He's quite tall, so he can play centre back as well. His market value is 5.1, but he has got 4 years left on his contract. So there's an argument to say that he's not looking to move on because he's got European football next season. He's got a bit of a contract to see out as well. If we were to put a bid in, I can imagine the club, the selling club, Cologne, putting up a bit of a fight for him. Probably looking at 20 million for him, I'd say. So Sorensen, a bit of a wild card, bit of an under the radar option there, but in terms of statistical performances, he's been absolutely excellent. He's got versatility, he's good in the air. And I think he'll be an absolutely cracking buy. But I think there'll be a couple of clubs maybe hovering around, but not too many. So I think we're still in with a little shout. 1-star rating for him. Okay, so let's look at centre-backs now. So Kieran Clark and Jamal Lascelles played most of the season as the back pairing. As much as Lascelles' form dropped towards the end of the season, it transpired that he was injured. I still think his positional play has a bit of improving to do. Chancellor Mbemba played well when called upon towards the end of the season. A player I really admire, but for some reason I'm pretty sure Rafa isn't crazy about him. I don't think Hanley's going to see the Premier League with us, so I think Hanley will be shipped on. So I think we'll be looking at centre back options to both create competition for squad places and really push the potential of players like Lascelles. I think Clark would be a good player as well, but I just think we need options defensively. We can't be left short in the centre of defence. We really can't. It's the Premier League. We'll be up against some of the best strikers in the world, and we need to be ready. We need to be prepared. We need to have a defence that can tackle the likes of Christian Benteke, but equally Sergio Aguero. You know, a real mix of top flight strikers. So we need to be ready for it. So here's my list of rumoured and some other centre backs that I think we should be maybe targeting to bolster that defence. First up on the centre backs list is the relegated Hull captain Harry Maguire. So he's been strongly linked with Newcastle pretty much ever since Hull's demise was confirmed in the Premier League. He's got a low market value of about 2.13 million, but he's only got 1 year left on his contract, and that's on top of being relegated as well. So I think he would be an excellent signing for us. I think he's the level that we're looking for. He's really proved himself. I think again a lot of other clubs are looking at him in the Premier League as well. He's got a who scored rating of 7.07. He averaged 4.9 clearances a game, which is absolutely massive. He's also got 2.4 aerial clearances per game as well. So good in the air, good blocker, and he's got a versatility of being able to play right back as well. So that might play into Rafa's thinking, but I think I'd be very surprised if we're not making some strong moves for Harry Maguire in the summer transfer window already. I think it'd be a solid buy, and we could get him for really cheap as well. Next on the list for centre-backs is another Middlesbrough player, relegated. It's England's Ben Gibson. He didn't have as good a season as Calum Chambers. His who scored rating was 6.82, which is pretty respectable still. His market value is 5.1. I've put him at a 3-star likelihood of signing because relegated, we can get him for quite cheap. Homegrown, he's in the area. He probably wouldn't need much persuading. He's only 24, so I still think he's got kind of plenty of potential to come, based on sort of what he's already shown. He's got really good clearance stats, but he's not very good in the air, and tackling was a bit iffy in terms of looking at statistics on who scored. So again, look, is he better than Hanley? Yes. Can he help fight for a first team place? Yes. So I think all in all, probably a 3-star probability of signing. Maybe a 2, because I think there's probably better options than him. But if Rafa was to go for him, I think we wouldn't find many obstacles in the way to sign him. There might be a bit of competition from other clubs around the country, but again, we're local, so that might play into Rafa's hands as well, and very beneficial. Good addition. Ryan Shawcross is a player that I quite admire and have done for a number of years. I think the last couple of seasons he's had, maybe not as strong as previously, but he's a tough defender, he's physical. I know that the rule changes to shirt pulling in the penalty box have maybe hampered his performances slightly because he keeps getting caught out, but I think in terms of if we're looking for an experienced Premier League centre-back, Ryan Shawcross is your man. I've put a 2-star probability rating on Shawcross signing simply because yes, he's only got a year left on his contract, but I know Stoke are looking to offer him an extension. I think it will be a case of him seeing which options he has available, who's coming in for him. I would like to think that we would be able to lure Shawcross from Stoke to Newcastle. I think it's a change of pace for him. It's a new challenge, but within the Premier League where he feels comfortable, he'll have been to St James's Park. He'll know what the setup's like there. Really good facilities, great crowd. I think he could be persuaded to come, and I think what Shawcross would bring is leadership, and he could command that back line. I think he would be captain material if he arrived, if not in an official capacity, but it's certainly in an unofficial capacity. He's only 29 still. He's still the right side of 30. He's got a market value of 9.35, but again, with a year left on his contract, you wouldn't be paying too much over that. Maybe about 15 million for him, I'd say. But you know what you're getting with Ryan Shawcross. There's no surprises there. I think he would be a really good addition. The 2 stars simply because Stoke want to offer him a contract. He might well stay, but then there might be some other suitors as well if a player of Ryan Shawcross's calibre is on the market this summer. But if we're going to go for him, I say we need to do it fast before he has too much time to think about the Stoke contract and before other players come in as well. But Ryan Shawcross, I'd say one of my more favoured centre-back targets that have been mentioned in the media over the last couple of weeks. Next up is a player from abroad that we've been linked with, is Ruben Semedo from Sporting Lisbon. I very much see Semedo as kind of in a kind of Van Dijk mould. He's tall and commanding, has a big presence. He's about 6'4". He's only 23, from Portugal. He's a very strong passer of the ball, so he'd be a ball-playing centre-back. It's kind of what we lack in Clark and Lascelles at the moment. It's what we have in Mbemba, but he's the only ball-playing centre-back I'd say that we have in the squad. Someone like Semedo's got a market value of about 6 million. He has got 5 years left on a deal, so that's going to be quite difficult to, I think, lure him away on the cheap. We'd have to pay probably, I don't know, maybe around the £25 million mark for him. There'll be a lot of clubs interested in him, given that he's played in the Champions League as well this season. But he looks a good option. I haven't seen much of him, but I think looking at his basic talents, defensively certainly, he's something that we don't have at the moment, and something he could be a danger from set pieces. And he's still got a lot of potential as well at 23 to go into. So I think it'd be a great signing if Rafa was to be able to lure him, but we'd probably face quite stiff competition for him. Next up is another Man City player. It's going to be quite a busy season there. Another player who Pep Guardiola's looking to ship out. It's Eliakim Mangala. So he first arrived at City with quite a lot of promise. I think they paid upwards of 40 million for him. It was a huge transfer fee. But he never quite settled at the Etihad and was quite haphazard, as I recall. He's gone on loan to Valencia this season, where he's had a pretty reasonable season. 6.83 who scored rating, which is pretty solid. Good numbers. I know Valencia fans are sort of pleased with him. I know they're in the mix to maybe try and buy him outright this summer. I know Guardiola's probably looking for a permanent buyer for him. He's a funny one because he clearly has the talent, but having not been able to perform in the Premier League before, in a better team, would he be the man to bring an assuredness to the defence, stability? This is what we need. If we're going to be bringing somebody in who presumably will be commanding quite significant wages, is he going to be any more solid than what we have? I'm not sure. His talent is there, he's athletic, he's good at clearances, interceptions. He's not crazily good in the air, unlike the last target, Semedo. So if we feel that we had enough options, is he more of a Mbemba kind of type, a sort of faster, more athletic, who would sort of sweep up the danger? I'm not sure if that might be an option. I've got him as a 1-star probability to signing, simply because I think Man City will be asking for mega wages, he will be asking for mega wages. Man City will probably command quite a high transfer fee, even though he's got only 2 years left. It's not quite 1 year, or I think they would still drive a hard bargain, given that he will be wanted by a couple of clubs. So it's a 1-star likelihood of signing for Newcastle for me, but I would certainly not be disappointed to see him. I think he's still got a lot to prove and a lot of good potential as well. The next 1-star rating is for quite a controversial one, Sunderland centre-back Lamine Kony. Now, he's obviously just been relegated. He has got 4 years left on a deal there, with a market value of 5.95 million. He performed reasonably given the fact that he was in the defence that got relegated, 6.75. But I think one of the main concerns about Kony probably surrounded his mentality. Is he a mercenary? Does he care? Would he play for the badge? He's clearly very good, and he was very good when he first arrived in Sunderland. He was a player that I admired last year, but I mean, since he's sort of been a bit under the radar. He maybe hasn't performed as well, but then again, the club, has anybody at that club, apart from a couple of them this season? So there's a lot of question marks there, but they have been relegated. He is in the area. We might be able to pick him up relatively cheaply, probably around the £10–12 million mark. I'm not sure. At 28, he's not getting any younger, and he's not massively experienced in the Premier League, which is why I've got him as a 1-star. but he's certainly an option, and he's a bit more athletic than a couple of the other players we already have. Next on the list is Liverpool's Mamadou Sakho. Now, surprisingly, he's only 27, and he's clearly not on Jurgen Klopp's plans, despite their pretty sketchy defence anyway. He's been on loan at Crystal Palace. He hasn't played many games at all this season, but he's still managed to get an average rating of 7.05 for those. He was instrumental in keeping Palace up, I think it's fair to say. I think with him in the side, they kept clean sheets for the first 2 or 3 games when he first arrived in January on loan. He got an injury towards the end, but Palace kept up. Sakho will be considering his options now, because I know with Allardyce going from Palace, that puts that into doubt whether they would buy him permanently. He might be looking up for other options anyway. I don't think Klopp is going to take a second chance on him. I think he's already made his mind up. I can expect Liverpool to be buying a few defenders in the summer as well. But the French international, yes, he's had a couple of injuries, and yes, he's been out of favour the last couple of years, but he's a really good player, and he proved that at Palace in the second half of the season. I think he'd be a great shout for us. I think he would. He also has that leadership quality, I think, that we're sorely missing at the back. Yes, I think with a market value of 8.5 million, he has got 3 years left on his Liverpool deal as well, so he wouldn't come cheap, probably around the 15-20 million pound mark, probably, given his age as well. But he would be an excellent signing, I think, but I do think it's unlikely, simply because he'd be looking at other suitors, maybe not taking the risk on a club that's just been promoted. Next up is another Frenchman, and it's Kurt Zouma of Chelsea. Now, he spent most of 2016 out with damaged cruciates. It's been a very slow comeback trail. He's not been able to make a dent on the first team, Chelsea, who obviously went on to win the league. He's actually only played 247 minutes all season, which is why his Who Scored rating is only 6.23. His market value is 14.45, but I've got Zouma as a 2-star probability of signing because of, I think Conte will be pushing him out on loan. I think he'll want Zouma to prove his fitness somewhere before he risks putting him into his title defending side. So I can see him wanting Zouma to go on loan in the Premier League to a club that's probably going to give him a lot of minutes. Now, I think Newcastle fit that bill, and I think he would be a really good signing. Look, it might turn out that Conte doesn't fancy him, and if he was to have a good season, prove his fitness, prove his form, he's still only 22. You know, he could really grow into his Premier League career. Still has a lot to grow, so a lot of room to grow. So I think coming to a team like Newcastle, he's a bit more versatile. He can play right back as well. He's kind of in the mould of Titus Bramble, but just a lot better. He's kind of, his acceleration's quite slow, but he's very fast once he gets going. He can be a bit clumsy with tackles sometimes, but he's very strong, physical, and he likes to bring the ball out of defence as well. He's a bit more of a ball playing centre back. I think he'd be an excellent addition to the side, providing the club feel that his injury problems are behind him. But as a loan, I think it presents a very small risk anyway, and it would be quite a canny little move. Next up is the second Celtic player of the video. It's Jozo Simunov from Celtic. Now, he's just won, well, they've just done the treble under Brendan Rodgers. He had a pretty good season, all told. He was very stable at the back. He's only got 6.74 on Who Scored, but then that's because Who Scored don't have those Scottish Premiership stats. So that's only the Champions League stats, but so that's a bit misleading, but he had a very good season. I've got him as a 2-star probability for signing. I think Celtic produce a lot of good players, or can develop a lot of good players. He's got 921 caps for Croatia. He's still only 22. He will probably be 23 by the end of the summer as well. He's got a market value of about 3 million, with about 3 years left on his deal. So I don't think we'd have to break the bank for him, probably between 12-15 million maybe, but again, he's like Semedo, he's quite tall, he's commanding, but there'll be a lot of clubs after him, so only a 2-star likelihood there. Probably not going to be our first choice, but I think he'd be a decent buy if we did. Last up for the defenders, transfer links, is Inter Milan's Jason Murillo. He's a Colombian defender who's found himself on the bench a lot the second half of this season. There's set to be a lot of wholesale changes at Inter Milan. They've come into a lot of money, and I think there'll be some massive recruitment there over summer. Murillo's obviously not fancied there. He's got a who scored rating of 6.79, which is reasonable. Market value of about 12 million, and with 3 years left on his contract as well. But there's talk that he could be available for as little as 12-13 million. Now, if that is the case, we need to be going for this guy, because he's still pretty young. He's only just turned 25, so he's got a lot of experience as it is. I've got a 2-star probability rating for him because Rafa's got ties with Inter Milan. I think we need to move fast for him if we do, but it would be quite a coup because I think he's a pretty good player, and he would add a bit of class to the defence. He's a bit of an all-rounder, so I think the guys that we already have could learn quite a lot from him. So that's about it for the defender transfer link videos. I obviously haven't managed to include every single rumour or whisper of defensive targets that we've got, but I've covered goalkeepers, left backs, right backs and centre backs as well. You can probably bet that we'll get at least a centre back, left back, right back. Goalkeepers are still a bit of a question for me there, but if we want to be ambitious, I think some of the players that we've talked about in this podcast I think would be worthy additions. A mixture of foreign and homegrown English players as well, or United Kingdom anyway. And I think a lot of the players that we've talked about here are better than what we have, provide better options, even if it's squad depth that we could get on a cheap, or any loan options that we can develop, young hungry players that would want to prove themselves to their parent clubs. That could be a really important market for Rafa this season. So that's about it. Please check out the other 2 podcasts. We'll be doing midfielders and attackers as well. I've got the bios, I've got the links in the bio below if you want to click straight under those and check those out as well. If you listen to this on iTunes or SoundCloud, it'll be the next track along. Thank you very much for watching and for listening to Transfer Link Defenders. If you've got some transfer targets that you think we should be going for, please comment below. Let's see who you think Rafa should be aiming for. And who knows, by the time you've ended up watching this video, we might have signed a loader anyway to completely negate everything I've just said. Okay, well, thanks very much, and we'll see you at the midfielders transfer link video and the attackers one as well. Catch us on Twitter and Facebook, share with all your friends, subscribe on YouTube, iTunes and SoundCloud. I've been Adam from the Toon Network, and we'll see you soon. Cheers, bye-bye.